What happens when you die in China? Hi, I'm Neil of Team Teacher, and in this video I'm going to go into some details about what happened after my daughter died in China. I'm doing this video in order to possibly help someone that has gone through or is going through dealing with a loss in China like myself, to either give them an idea of what possibly comes next in both practical and emotional terms, or to just speak candidly about the taboo topic of death, in hope that others in a similar position to myself might find a space to share. Additionally, each year around my daughter's birthday, I like to do something to honor her memory. So this year, this is it. My daughter, Autumn Elizabeth Travis, was born on January 30th, 2018, and due to complications, she died on the very same day. I'm not going to go into detail about that day. I will put links to some previous videos that we did that will explain that if you want to know more, and links to also our parenting journey in China as well, and I'll put those in the description box and the comments below this video. Suffice to say, my wife was seriously ill after the birth of Autumn, so I was tasked with dealing with the practical aspect of the death while she focused on recovering. The practicalities of the aftermath of a death in China come frequent and fast within the first few days and week. So this is a documentation of what I went through, and hopefully it helps someone out there that maybe go through something similar. First, we had to inform the company where we worked, and they began communication with the hospital. There are lots of legal issues that come up from this kind of thing that affect your employment, one of which is the whole back to work procedure. We were expecting Fanny to have many months off as part of her maternity leave, because maternity leave in China is actually quite long and extensive. But because of what happened, there was a lot of confusion as to what length of time she was legally entitled to have off. There was a debate over if the death was to be classified as a miscarriage or stillbirth or a loss of a child after birth. As weird and as harsh as it sounds, in China and many other countries, it can be quite arbitrary about how long grief-based time off should take, and that was one of the things that we encountered. Was there was just so much confusion with how to move forward with how much time off Fanny should take from a legal standpoint. There was no sort of regard to how much time that she might have needed, and all of that emotional aspect. It was basically black and white by the numbers. What does the law say in this regard? So that's something to expect. Fanny did actually get the longer amount of time eventually after much deliberation, which was needed as well because she wasn't physically able to do her job straight away. I'm not sure what would have happened if she was asked to work sooner, as her visa was tied to her employment. I'd speculate she might have to have changed to a different visa or even return home. There would be no guarantee of pay or the free housing that we received as part of our contract. Again, I'm just reiterating, everything is done per the law, per what a company and hospitals, or especially your company, has to do by the letter of the law. I wouldn't expect them to go outside of that remit, as harsh as it sounds. Sometimes they will be more compassionate, sometimes they won't, but at least what the law is. You will have that amount of time. The second point is that you have to decide whether you want an autopsy, which cost about 10,000 yuan. We opted to have one done because we wanted some medical records to know definitively what happened, both for peace of mind, but also moving forward, if we wanted to have more children, was it something that was genetic or etc., something that can affect us in the future. What we didn't know is that if an autopsy is ordered, the police are automatically informed, as it is then treated as almost like a suspicious death. It's flagged in a way. When that happens, you have to have an interview with the police and explain why you want an autopsy. If you think that the death is suspicious, if you are going to put forth some charges, etc., you need to request a translator from the police, which they'll provide if they have one available. But if I remember correctly, they didn't, and one of the doctors or a bunch of the doctors in the hospital helped with the translation. The third thing, and the thing that I think is most difficult to deal with, is what happens with the body, what you do with the body. Cremation is the norm in China, and it normally happens within the first week of death. If you want a burial, I believe you have to make a special request, and if you want to take the body out of the country, you need to contact your embassy for special arrangements. You will need to provide your own urn or container for the ashes. I was very busy, occupied with dealing with the employment aspect, the bills, and just helping my wife recover, and the whole emotional mess that I asked one of the doctors to buy me just like a simple urn container, because I didn't know how or where to buy one. Plus, like I said, I had my plate full. However, it must have got lost in translation, because on the day of the cremation, I was given what looked like basically a plastic Ferrero Rocher box, which obviously wouldn't be safe to contain ashes. So on the day of on the way to the crematorium, we called just by a supermarket, I think, and we picked up a securable glass container like Tupperware, just as temporary container, so we had something to store the ashes in, and at a later time we could find something more befitting our daughter. I'm glad that I did get this Tupperware, because we got to the crematorium and all the urns and containers that were on sale, they were just super expensive and overly elaborate, and we just wanted something simple that we could easily transport out of the country, that we could later change when Fanny was well enough to have our own funeral service with our family and friends. The crematorium was a huge industrial park stroke factory on the outskirts of the city in Guangdong. The actual cremation was done on that day while you waited, and it took about half a day to complete. It cost about 50 yuan. It was actually very cheap, and it was like a cheap, fast production line process. And there were options to have funeral services, and I did see some, but I believe they had to be arranged ahead of time, and it would have just been me. So we opted to not go that route, and as I say, at a later date, do our own service for autumn. It was a harrowing day, and apart from the day that Autumn died, the most difficult day of my life, because if you requested an autopsy, there are some extra steps that you have to take that you should know about. Unfortunately, I didn't. The first is you will need to meet the medical examiners who have transported the body to the crematorium, and you will have to sign some release documents for the autopsy, which is then done in an examination room behind the cremation factory. Unfortunately, in my case, this is right where the exhaust fumes leave the crematorium, and it's as unpleasant as you can imagine. You will need to then identify the body within the medical bag before they will do the autopsy. The body won't be cleaned up. It will be as is. So prepare yourself as best as you can. You will then leave, and they will do the autopsy. When they finish the exam, the body is then released back to the crematorium. At this point, you will again need to identify the body before they begin the cremation. Again, the body won't be cleaned up and will be now within a clear yellow cremation bag. After you've identified the body again, the body will be cremated and placed into the container, the urn, or whatever you gave to the crematorium earlier. And as soon as the cremation happens, you'll be given the ashes as they leave the furnace. So don't be surprised if you receive them and it still feels warm. Additionally, unlike Western cremation, the remains aren't reduced completely to an ash. There are still bone fragments left inside. So you have your ashes and the remains in your container, and then you can leave with them, and that's it done. A few weeks later, you'll get the autopsy report back. It will all be in Chinese. Be prepared for when you open that, because it does include pictures, and they can be graphic pictures. So, take a moment before you have a read of that autopsy. Just be aware. And when you have that report, you'll likely have some sort of meeting with the hospital and the doctors, and they can go over that autopsy report point by point, and you can get yourself a translator, or if you have some English speaking doctors, they can explain it to you. And that's it for the moment if you stay in China. Once you decide to leave China, you'll need to take the death certificate and other related documents that you accrue to a notary public. And at the notary public, they normally have a translation office next to it, especially if it's a large public notary, and you'll have to get an official translation of the documents, then they notarize them. And this is in order for you to be able to take the ashes out of China. When you purchase your plane tickets, you should notify the carrier that you'll be carrying ashes, just to see if they have their own special procedure that you have to go through. But you basically can just tell them you've got all the correct documentation, and there's not normally anything special, from my understanding, that you need to go through to transport ashes outside of China, apart from having that documentation just in case. You'll need to carry the ashes in your hand luggage, and this is to avoid loss, because it's very precious cargo, and just make sure that you pack them securely to prevent any breakage. When we left China, we found a very nice funeral home in Canada that helped us select a new urn that we felt honored our beloved Autumn, and they helped reduce all of her remains into ashes. We then joined a remembrance light service, and we video recorded this, and I'll put a link below if you want to watch it. It's very beautiful. And we did that so that all our family and friends around the world could join us in saying goodbye to her. We found that there wasn't much in terms of help for coping and coming to terms with the loss in China, apart from our friends. So when we arrived in Canada, we immediately sought out grief counselors and support groups, and they helped immensely. I can't say how important it was for us to seek help, especially a support group, because when you lose a child, you become part of a very select group of people, and it's very difficult for other people that haven't lost a child to relate. And we found it very important to have other people that have been through the same loss. So if you are dealing with a loss, I'd highly recommend that you find those that are going through a similar situation to yourself, and reach out. It's one of the things that helped us the most. It often felt cold dealing with death in China. Many parts of the process were just matter of fact, letter of the law, this is what happens next, sign this, yada yada yada. It created a lot of resentment within me at that time, which I'm still coming to terms with, as it just felt there wasn't much value put on life, on kindness and compassion from institutions and establishment. The people were generally very nice. Our friends, our doctors, they did the best that they could. But just in retrospect, hopefully that was just our experience, but if that was just a common experience of how death is treated in China, it just makes me really sad. Dealing with death in China was harsh, and I just felt it was much harsher than it needed to be. If you are watching this video and you're dealing with a loss in China, I really feel for you. Reach out to your family, your friends, these support groups, for help, for aid, for compassion, for support, and hold on until you can find those establishments that are out there that can help you with kindness and with compassion. It is out there, but you might not find it within Chinese establishments and institutions, unfortunately. I hope you found this video informative. If you've dealt with a loss in China, please leave your stories, share your stories in the comments below. Maybe you can connect with others. Maybe you can leave some information that might help those that are going through a hard time, in the same way that I hope this video helps or someone that is dealing with a loss in China and they're wanting to know kind of what comes next. And that's it. All my love. Take care.